We've been talking over the past couple of weeks, talking and writing about our call to the joy of love. Really, it's the idea that part of God's gift to us, men and women, married, single, celibate, is the call to bear fruit. Jesus says in John chapter 15, I am the vine, you are the branches, and I call you to bear fruit that will last. And so in every state of life, fertility is an adjective, a state of being that applies to all of us. But we've been talking about it to begin with in the most immediate sense. That sense in which a man and woman bonded in marriage have the experience of together begetting a child. The beauty, the challenge of that. This week, having spoken about the general gift of fertility to men and women in marriage and to all of us, we also have to round this out by talking about how people experience impediments to their fertility in the physical sense. And there's no physical experience that doesn't also have an emotional and a spiritual context. And so our guest, Dr. Karen Pohelos, is here really to field all of these questions. So Karen, welcome back to this
series.
Thank
you. Happy to be back.
Yeah, and in your own practice, in your own witness of faith life, how have you run into this experience of infertility? What's it like for people?
Right. A good part of my practice, and the part of my practice that is women's health, is dealing with this issue. So infertility in a medical sense is defined as trying to achieve pregnancy for 1 year and being unsuccessful. But nowadays, I'd even say we shorten that up because people have apps and they're doing home urine testing, so they're not waiting a year to come to me to talk about it. It's a very difficult experience. Couples are longing for a child and they feel like they're healthy, they're exercising, they're eating the right food, and it's not happening. And they want answers, they're frustrated. They can be frustrated by seeing teens able to get pregnant at the drop of a hat seemingly, and they're not able to, and doesn't God want them to have a child? So the struggle starts at a physical, and rapidly when I'm talking with them moves into their emotions around this, and often we move into a conversation about where God is in this for them.
That's beautiful that you can bring it there. It's part of your own witness as a faith-filled physician.
It goes naturally.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, when you are dealing with a couple who come and say, we want to conceive, but we're not able, what are the possible origins of that?
So everybody naturally always thinks of the woman's fertility first, and of course we're going to look at that, but we also do look at the male fertility because sometimes it is mainly a male factor, other times it's both. So when I'm working with a couple, I always tell them, especially in family medicine, I can do this, is that I would like to have a chance to talk to your husband and maybe check some blood work and labs on him to see, I want to optimize both of them. I always tell them that what I try to do is to optimize their health, but God's going to decide if he gives them the baby. But we're going to do our very best to make sure you're as healthy as possible to help that along.
Amazing. And just to round this one question out, you also mentioned something called secondary infertility. That's not as a source of...
Right, so secondary infertility is when a couple has successfully achieved a pregnancy and has a child, but they are unable to have another child. And that is more common than you would think. People generally think that, oh, okay, if it worked once, it's going to keep working. But sometimes a couple has one child fairly easily and then cannot again. And then that's a source of frustration. Well, what broke in between then and now?
Okay. And as a physician, what is it that you can offer to infertile people in the physical sense?
In the physical sense, it's offering to try to evaluate to look at their cycle. A healthy cycle reflects the woman's health. So if I ask the women to cycle chart, if the cycle chart reveals signs to me that or is suggesting an abnormal cycle, we're going to pursue those. Even those cycles that look normal on paper or on an app nowadays actually do have a chance of having hormonal issues. So there's certain blood work I will always check on these women to look for fairly common problems that come up that we need to address, because I think people's thought often is go to a reproductive endocrinologist or an infertility specialist, and they will do generally a brief blood work evaluation, but then they will go to intrauterine insemination IUI or in vitro fertilization IVF. And the problem is, if there are underlying issues that weren't found out in that brief workup, you could make an embryo, but it's not going to be a successful pregnancy if the underlying problem is still there. If she has a thyroid issue, or if she has problems with insulin resistance, kind of a pre-diabetes thing, you can have the correct environment and have the embryo in the correct environment, but if everything else around it is a problem, it's not going to work.
Gotcha.
Or doesn't work as well, and then they have the additional heartbreak of a miscarriage.
Gotcha. So there's really things to talk about at the level of the body.
A lot of things to talk about.
Right. Okay. That's just important for people to know.
Yeah, no, it is.
And suppose that people go through this whole conversation and they still have the longing to conceive and can't. Then can you point them? Where do you point them from there?
If they have not had a surgical, now, like, to complete the medical workup, the labs and stuff I do are a big part of it, but not the only part. If there are concerns for something surgical like endometriosis or blocked tubes, I'm going to refer them to OBGYN surgeons who have special training in that.
Mm-hmm.
If we're assuming that we have turned all stones and done everything, and we've done some medications for ovulation induction and nothing is working, then we often have the discussion about, have you thought about expanding your family through adoption or through fostering? Fruitfulness, fertility and fruitfulness, you're going to see a beautiful witness story in the bulletin this weekend from a couple from our parish talking about their struggle with infertility. But they brought home the great point that they can still bear fruit. And that is being active in the lives of, say, I think in that case it was their nieces and nephews. Or another family may be called to do foster care. Another family may be called to seek adoption. And those are beautiful ways to be fruitful, aside from having your own biologic child.
That's lovely. And really just to fulfill something that's constitutive of our humanity, isn't it?
Yes.
Really, that need to give and foster life.
Right.
That's built into us, and so finding ways to actualize it are really crucial in every state of life.
And every state of life. Well, you mentioned when we were talking about celibacy having a role in that, or people who are not in religious vows but are called to the single life, they still are called to be fruitful. It's just going to be a different kind of fruit, as was mentioned in the article in the bulletin this week.
That's beautiful.
So everybody, it's not just the cute married couples in the pews who are called to be fertile. The priests are called to be fertile and fruitful by helping to be spiritual parents to us. That's why we call you Father. So everybody has their place in this, and it's hard when people's places don't turn out to be what they had hoped they would be.
Yeah, it is.
I think, the couples who get married at this parish are saying their vows that they are open to the gift of children, and many of them really want to have children. And for the percentage who find out that this is not going to happen for them, it's hard to swallow initially and look for what God is trying to lead them to. He's not left them in the dark, but they have to work through finding out what his will for them is.
Yeah. It comes back, it seems to me, and I've worked through this in my own life as a celibate person, to that image of the vine, that you're a transmitter of life. and whatever state of life you're in, you're both receiving his life and passing it on in the way that he gives you to do it. And the struggle is really to embrace that, I think, that flow of life. And we see that, of course, in your own life as a mother, your practice as a physician, your witness as a member of our parish. And thank you really for bearing fruit in this month with your writings in the bulletin and these videos and the training that you're leading us toward.
Thank you. We are very excited about the training. This whole month is exciting. It's been a lot of work for the parish staff and me, but I think we pray that it is going to bear its own fruit. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to dive into this more than just NFP We Cure, which is still an awesome thing, and we did it for a number of years, but to dig more deeply into the topic and go wider and deeper over these 4 weeks. So I'm really grateful we've had the chance.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a pleasure to walk with you in it, and we'll look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you.
Take care now.
Thank you.